dismissed you. Make sure they know where to contact you for further questions or more information. When things quiet down, get out your field notes and write your report. What makes a group of people a crowd and what turns a crowd into a mob is an interesting study in the dynamics of human behavior. Whenever a large group gets together, it's a safe bet that security professionals in the area are going to want to keep an eye on what's going on. A little understanding into what constitutes a crowd and how they can be handled needs to be a part of your arsenal of information. The behavior of a crowd will usually depend on what motivated the crowd to come together in the first place. Most types of crowds can be placed into one of the following categories. Acquisitive crowds are motivated by their common desire to get something. These can be found at a sale or an auction. There is no leader and everyone is there on their own. Expressive crowds are there to tell everyone what they feel about something. They are common at rallies and conventions. Spectator crowds come together to watch an event of some type. You'll find them at sporting events and parades. Hostile crowds are there to cause problems or because they want to make a strong point about something. They can be found sometimes at political gatherings or union functions. Escape crowds are trying to get away from something fearful like a fire or other disaster. The type of crowd that you will be confronting will suggest the ways in which you can deal with it. Most leaderless crowds are easy to handle. Crowds with an agenda and a designated leader can be more troublesome. A crowd that turns into a mob can be very dangerous. When you see a crowd start to gather, regardless of the reason, start to write down what you see and notify your supervisor. An assessment needs to be made of the type of crowd that's forming, and the crowd control plan has to be pulled down from the shelf and activated. Order must be maintained, or a crowd could turn ugly and hostile. You need to remain calm and professional and follow the instructions of your supervisor. There are two basic guidelines to go by when you find yourself dealing with a medical emergency. First, do not exceed the scope of your training. Don't try to act like a paramedic or a nurse unless you really are one. Stay within the ability that you have and use the emergency equipment properly. Get the professionals headed your way as quickly as possible. Clear the way for the ambulance and the paramedics and stand by to assist them in whatever way you can. First aid training is wonderful and you're encouraged to get as much of it as you can. Just remember the guidelines when you do. Every organization and company in the business world should have some formal plan in place for responding to bomb threats. With the threat of terrorism spreading worldwide, the number of actual instances in which bombs are used to commit an act of sabotage or vandalism are increasing. The following is a basic listing of the things you need to keep in mind when you respond to this type of call. Get the basic information. When was the call made? Where did the call come from? Where is the supposed bomb located? When is the supposed bomb set to explode? What were the exact words used by the caller? What could the call taker hear in the background? Have there been any previous hoaxes? What danger does the threat really create for people or property? Once this basic information has been studied and evaluated, we can get to the next phase of the response. What type of security responses are we going to initiate? One response is a full evacuation. It should only be used when the explosive risks are great or if any positive proof exists of an explosive device in the area. Usually a full evacuation is not a first response unless it's clearly needed. Localized evacuation. When we have reason to believe that a small device is present or that the potential for casualty risks can be reduced, we should consider this alternative. Surrounding areas may not have to be disturbed, but always decide on the side of caution and safety. Personnel work area search. If the situation is seemingly a hoax and excessive risks are not present, the work area supervisors should be used along with trained personnel to make a localized search. Any strange or out-of-place items should be noted and consideration given to evacuations. Security personnel search. In addition to the 3 responses already covered, we may want to have all available security personnel conduct a planned search of any area for potential bombs as well. A police search. In certain situations, it may be best to call the local authorities and let them conduct a formal bomb search of an area with their own protocols and equipment, including bomb-sniffing dogs and specialized screening equipment. If an evacuation is used, the following guidelines will help ensure that it is done as safely and quickly as possible. Everyone should leave through main or regular fire exits in a quiet and orderly manner. Employees should assemble in pre-arranged safe areas, and supervisors should conduct a roll call. When leaving, the supervisors should try to disconnect any electrical apparatus that they can safely reach. Maintenance people should shut down all heating and air handling units in the area as soon as possible. Elevators should not be used to evacuate people. As people evacuate, they should be instructed to open as many doors and windows as they can. People who are evacuating should be instructed to take their personal belongings with them. Supervisors should be the last to leave the area and should also be opening as many doors and windows as they can. The rules for searching an area for a potential explosive device are as follows. Never use more searchers than absolutely necessary. Use a maximum of 2 searchers per room. Use searchers in alternate rooms or locations. Never assume that only one device has been planted. Do not stop searching if you find something suspicious. Report it and keep looking. Clearly mark and report the areas that have been searched. Clearly mark and report the areas found to be hazardous. Do not allow searching for more than 10 minutes without a few minutes rest. Things to look for while conducting a bomb search include the following: recently disturbed ground, sawdust or brick dust, electrical wire or electrical wiring tape, small diameter string or fishing line, dirty looking rope, possibly a fuse, aluminum foil, loose floorboards, rumpled or disturbed carpeting, objects that have been moved, objects that do not belong in that area, packages wrapped in paper that have grease or oil spots, and finally, partially open drawers. Although it's true that most bomb threats are just threats and nothing more, we cannot respond to them as if they're not potentially dangerous. We are the ones who are being paid to be cautious. Every corporation and organization in the business world today has what is commonly referred to as a disaster plan. It is a planned response to such things as flood, fire, severe storm, lightning strike, power outage, and a computer system shutdown. These kinds of disasters can be devastating to an organization. In these situations, your function is to remain as calm as possible and focus on getting things operational as quickly as possible. The listing of basic functions that you should focus on during a disaster consists of the following. Gather information. Facts are needed at this time, not guesses, hearsay, and opinions. Get out there and get real information that people can use about the conditions and the reality of the situation. Control access to the area. Let in those who need to be there and keep out those who don't. Protect people first. Then we can worry about equipment and records. Keep the communication lines open. People are going to need to talk to other people, and you may be the best way to get information in and out of the area. Know the shutdown procedures. We have to shut down everything before we can look at it and restart it. Watch for the secondary disaster. Floods can cause fires, and fires can cause explosions. One disaster can set the stage for another, and we need people to be alert to those potential secondary disaster situations. Keep your guard up. Disasters set the stage for people to commit crimes too. The confusion and the noise of a disaster are seen by some as the perfect cover for a theft or vandalism. Don't relax too soon. When it comes to disaster response, the professionals will tell you that Murphy was an optimist. Take careful and complete notes. Once everything does settle down, the long and difficult process of assessment and investigation into the disaster is going to start. You can make that much easier with the accurate information that you keep in your notebook. Stay professional. People will be watching you to see how they should respond. Set a good example and be proud of your contribution. Workplace violence. This is perhaps the most frightening situation that a security officer will ever have to deal with. The instances of workplace violence are making headlines in cities all over the world. In our day-to-day function as protection providers, we are in contact with a number of people during the course of the day. In addition to the daily contact, we also have the benefit of being trained observers of what goes on in the workplace on a daily basis. These two factors, access to people and the ability to observe them closely, places us in a unique position to be able to report potential workplace violence predictors long before an actual event takes place. What follows is a listing of certain common behavioral characteristics, also known as predictors. We can use these to recognize the potential for violent behavior on the part of someone at the work site. Please remember that typecasting is unrealistic in the real world. Violence is not something that happens just because someone is a particular type of person. Violence in the workplace happens because of a mixture of experiences and emotions that are reinforced over time. Here's a listing of the most common predictors of workplace violence. Someone who is disgruntled over perceived injustices at work. Someone who is angry or upset about the everyday things that happen at work. Someone who takes up cause for the underdog in an extreme way. A loner who is socially isolated. A person who has no outside interests and is totally absorbed in the job. They're more than just shy. Someone who has poor self-esteem, hurt, rejected, and powerless in the way they act. Someone who is angry all the time and about almost everything. Someone who threatens. Someone who likes to intimidate people. Someone who's very interested in media coverage of violence. They might even suggest that similar instances on the job might get some attention. Someone who collects weapons, all types or one specific type. Someone from an unstable family or background. There's no support system for them to fall back on. Someone who is always arguing or fighting with management, usually without union support. Someone who is showing constant signs of stress. Someone who has a very spotty or migratory job history. Someone who is abusing alcohol or drugs. And finally, someone who is vindictive in their actions or words. Now, this list is not all-inclusive. These are only clues to a deeper problem that could show itself in the form of an act of workplace violence. Remember, violence does not happen in a vacuum. It is the result of an escalating process. The process builds and builds to a violent act. The experts agree that once a person decides to act the violence out, they will usually try by one of three methods. The warning signs happen first. Then the person will respond in one of these ways: actively or passively refusing to cooperate with supervisors. They will spread rumors, gossip, argue, and generally act in a belligerent way, including swearing and making unwanted sexual comments. Refuses to comply with company policies and rules, sabotages equipment, steals company property, and may even threaten to physically harm coworkers. They develop a me against them attitude. Frequent outward displays of anger, suicidal threats, physical fights with others, use of weapons against others, and finally, the commission of a criminal act against someone at work. The most important thing for you to remember as a security professional is this: recognize the signs of workplace violence as early as possible. When it comes to preventing workplace violence, early intervention is the key. When you think you see any of the signs, be sure to report the situation to your supervisor as soon as possible. Do not wait and do not assume that everything will turn out all right. As a security professional, you are probably one of the best students of the human condition that your organization has. Trust your instincts. Let someone know. When an emergency situation develops at the job site, it is natural for the media to want information about it. That is what they do for a living, and we are taking the wrong approach if we try to stop them or get in the way. However, dealing with the media is not a job for a line security officer. It is best left to a supervisor or a security professional who has had some specialized training in working with media types. Your best bet when confronted by a reporter is to make a referral to the company or department media relations expert. You do not have to answer questions, and you should not take it upon yourself to express an opinion about anything related to the emergency. Be professional. Point out to them the direction of the media briefing area and go back to doing your job. That's our program on emergency situations. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on PSTN.